Battlestar Galactica Season 3, Episode 8, Unfinished Business is over, but we have to go fracking down the hatch here on RHAP. We know scripted TV talking BSG 308, Unfinished Business. We had some unfinished business with not getting to this podcast sooner. We apologize about that. And I, Josh Wigler, additionally apologize because while I do have Mike Bloom on the line, it took me a long time to get Mike to agree to appear on this episode of Battlestar Galactica Down the Hatch. If you're watching the video version, which you can get on the We Know Scripted TV YouTube page, will know he has his back turned to me, and he actually hasn't looked at me or talked to me since we've gotten on. So I guess I'll try now that we hit record. Mike Bloom, are you slowly turning towards the camera? Okay, and you look I'm
pissed.
You look mad. He looks mad.
Absolute wrath coming from every orifice.
Oh God!
My face for the better part of a month. Josh Wigler.
Yeah,
I have sat here. I was ready to give up hope, much like these very much maligned colonists, remnants of humanity scattered to the winds or lack thereof in outer space. I thought, okay. You know what? 41, we're done.
Sure.
Done with 41. Yeah. I think it'll happen somewhere. It'll happen at some point, maybe even in season 3. But in no way, in no earthly possible iteration, no two neuron synapses connected in my brain to even give me the mere thought that I was right. I was right there. I was the Seattle Seahawks in the 2014 Super Bowl. I should have given the ball to beast mode, and I threw it. Instead, I'm that meme of that guy digging through the mines, and he's 1 inch away from the diamonds, and he turns around and goes home. Josh, 42.
Yeah.
42 episodes. We have confirmed fracking. Speaking of mining, I was one! How does that happen?
Mike Bloom.
I can understand if I was like 10 off.
You were 1 episode off.
I was 1. That is a 42 is a lost number too. I should have just gone with
42 is a lost number within 42 episodes of Battlestar Galactica. Lee Adama and Kara Thrace finally frack. Mike Bloom had multiple opportunities to reset the goalposts, to try again, to figure out when they would frack.
Multiple is 1. Okay, in this case, you were very nice to say, I'll give you 2.
Not reset it twice?
No, we said 31 at first, and then you said, I'll give you 10 more. Okay. And let's also make this clear as well. You were also not aware that it would become immediately on episode 2. The 10 was just sort of an arbitrary number.
Did I give you 10 more, or did you give yourself 10 more?
You gave me 10 more.
This sounds like a scheme. And I promise you, there was no scheme, no collusion. There was no attempt to snow you here, Mike. I think the stars aligned exactly as they were supposed to get you into the position where you would predict within 41 episodes, Starbuck and Lee Adama would frack, and you missed it. And then the very next episode, within like the first minute.
I mean, listen, depending on whatever version you want, you could cut right to the chase, or you get a nice, 5 minutes of foreplay. But no matter what, the fracking was
there. They're fracking.
I feel fracked. You know what? I'm the one that feels the most penetrated at the end of this, with apologies to Kara Thrace. Yes. I am the one who has been done the most. Really,
you've been done the most, definitely.
I understand now, watching something like the Joe Schmo Show or Jury Duty, where I am just walking through, head in the clouds, humming la da dee da day, thinking like, all right, this is such a great time. Sure, I'll throw some predictions out. We never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And all you perverted looky-loos sitting there saying like,
Yeah.
he doesn't even know.
He didn't know.
He's thinking that it's all done and dusted, but little does he know the hammer will drop. And when it dropped so freaking hard.
Yeah.
I am shattered at this point. The jig is up. Joke's on me. Ha ha, hee hee. Wipe the pie off my face. I feel like I've been proverbially punched in the face more so than the culmination of all these people on the freaking Big G.
Well, these people are dealing with genocide and stuff. I feel like they have it slightly worse than
my expectations were genocided.
I'll just never forget. We got to the moment where you were not going to get it right, and we said, "Honey, just allow me one more chance. Let's give him another shot. Gets another set of episodes. Gets to the point where we're at 41, and you open up the next episode, Battlestar Galactica, season 3, episode 8, the 42nd episode of BSG, which could have been titled "And the Gods Made Love," because we see Apollo and Kara fracking within the first couple of minutes. And this was a thing that I recall stumbling upon the realization that this had happened, talking with the team behind the curtain, Brendan and Ben, like, wait a minute, I think, and they're like, yeah. So we've been eagerly anticipating this in the formerly post-show recaps patron Discord, which if you're a hatchling and you're not in there, just send us an email down the hatch, rhap@gmail.com. We'll happily put you in there. But I remember people being like, wait a minute, is that? And we're like, yeah. And so we've been waiting. We've been waiting with bated breath. Now, Mike, let me add a bit of a silver lining for you. Okay?
Please do. I could need, Josh, anything that's like just a hint of gray I could be using at this very rainy day.
Well, I think that I could give you a good old blast of gray, Mike. I think that
blast me.
I think that we're good. Okay, so there are 13 episodes in Battlestar Galactica season 1. There are 20 episodes in Battlestar Galactica season 2. Which makes the season 2 finale of Battlestar Galactica makes that the 33rd episode of BSG. Now, while in this episode, canonically, the 42nd episode of Battlestar Galactica is where we finally see Lee Adama and Kara Thrace frack, technically, chronologically, they fracked somewhere in the middle of episode 33. Somewhere within that season 2 finale, there's a 1-year time jump. Somewhere within episode 33, Lee and Starbuck fracked. And we have earmarked that as your tiny little consolation prize that kind of, sort of, technically they fracked in episode
I'll
33.
take it!
Okay, his shirt is open. His nips are out. Mike Bloom is just showing.
Yeah, baby!
Mike Bloom just took his shirt off.
Eat it!
A lot of chest.
Smack it!
Wow.
Spit on it!
Spit on it!
I'm technically right!
Wow, Huck Tua! Wow. So there you have it, Mike. If you want to take that as a silver lining, they frack.
Oh, I'm doing it. Call up B. Coops and Jennifer Lawrence, because we're doing the Silver Linings playbook right now.
Yeah.
Listen, what I will say is that solipsism is a now defunct philosophy in which the party believes that they are the only real living being in existence. They're the only one with thoughts, and everything else around them, whether you call it a simulation, a facsimile, solipsism. And I am somebody, just due to decades of self-effacing anxiety and depression, who would never on earth believe that anyone would hold this system.
Yeah.
But considering that, to your point, the cosmos have aligned, a syzygy has formed in such a way that I was, silver lining accepted, one episode away from this prediction, which I made, Josh, back when we first spoke syllables about Battlestar Galactica. Back during the mini-series, I had made this prediction. The fact that I was one episode away has me kind of being like, okay, there's some credence to this. Like, this is weird. This is really, really strange to me. And now I'm starting to exist within the Baltar method of thinking like, okay, is there a grand master plan?
Are
here?
you a
Am I at the
Cylon is the question.
If I am, I'm so sorry to the Cylons, because like I have been corrupted. I've had my own presumptive virus, and I'm assumingly have infected so many other people.
Bloomer.
Let me just also say, dragon fruit, not a bit. I'm fine. I know that I'm very thankful.
There was some concern. There was some people being like, "Wait, did Mike actually rage quit the podcast? I feel terrible." And it's like, no, he's fine. He's fine.
No,
he's
it
a
legitimately
little emotionally wounded, but he's ultimately fine.
It legitimately did come down to scheduling, that we just couldn't make things align in anticipation for the holidays. Josh, you spent some time away. You went to your own Cloud9.
Yes.
So I'm very, and this shows, Josh, just like how great of a community we've been able to cultivate over 5.5 years at this point, that like I did have some very nice people reaching out to me to check in to make sure.
So cute.
Not only am I okay, for what's worth, Josh, this is fracking hysterical.
Hysterical.
I am obsessed with this. Ever since I saw on the Blu-ray, they show like select your episode, and the picture of Unfinished Business was of Apollo and Starbuck in the boxing ring. I'm like, A, where are they? B, no. No. To the point, Josh, where I know we're going to talk about this extended Snyder Cut-esque version of the episode that never made it to air. But I actually watched some of the 44-minute version first that actually did air on TV, because I was just absolutely flummoxed by this and the previously on.
Okay, well, let's keep the fun going here.
Yeah.
We will talk about the episode today for sure. And we did, so Mike and I watched the extended version of Unfinished
There's a lot of extended stuff in this episode.
Certainly at least one thing. Cards Up, I watched it weeks ago and haven't had a chance to go back to it. So if my grasp on it is a little thinner than usual, I apologize for that. I
rewatched it this morning because I want to get hurt all over.
Great,
again.
You're fresher than I am on it. We will talk about it. This is a version that's either on the Blu-ray or you got to find it somewhere. It's not the version that streams. The version that streams is a standard 42-minute episode. The Unfinished Business extended cut is 70 minutes, I believe, ultimately. Ron Moore does a DVD audio commentary track on this episode, I believe. They felt like they had so much unfinished business that they had to go for a fuller cut. This is your friend and mine, the great DM Philly, Rich Filiberto, here on these mean internet streets. He loves this episode of Battlestar Galactica. This is his favorite episode of Battlestar Galactica. He sent me a little bit of a write-up.
Okay.
He tried to be concise about it and apologized that he couldn't be concise about it. He says the heart of this episode is the reason why he loves it. It belongs to Cara Thrace and Leah Dama. Rich says, if you've heard me talk Star Wars, you've heard me say Katie Sackhoff is an underrated performer who conveys powerful authenticity at her best. Starbuck is obviously an avatar of empowerment, inclusion, and representation at a time when it was woefully missing on the screen. She's a hero, but what truly elevates her as a character is how flawed she is. She's damaged, self-destructful, hurtful, selfish, and never more so than in this hour. In today's parlance, we'd call Lee and Kara's relationship toxic. The whole dynamic between Anders and Dee and both of them is poisonous. But Starbuck and Apollo share something that can't be shared with anyone else. Their connection, as polluted as it may be, has affected them both profoundly. Between the chemistry and the baggage, they have a singular relationship. The cliches exist for a reason. The heart wants what the heart wants. We don't choose the ones we love. You get the gist. In ways I think The Leftovers does exceptionally, Battlestar Galactica often embodies the feeling that we are all alone together. Rich says, I relate to that. I've had moments across my life that are singular and irrevocable that I simply cannot share the weight of with anyone except possibly that person I experienced them with. These two, Lee and Kara, for better and for worse, and I know it's probably for worse, feel less alone together. It may be idiosyncratic, but life has taught me, this is still Rich, one thing beyond dispute. The human experience is an impossible contradiction. We will celebrate and laugh and sing and shout our love to the heavens. We will weep and wail and gnash our teeth against the pain we'll endure. We will overcome and succeed. We will stumble and fail. Across our journeys will be many things to many people: family, friends, partners, lovers, teachers, rivals, enemies. That's not always easy to reconcile. Our job, if we choose to accept it, is learning how to walk that path for ourselves. Kara and Lee don't know how, but by the gods, does this hour leave me hoping that they can find theirs for themselves. I am a notorious stick in the mud anti-shipper, but I am all in on these broken, hurtful people. They can fix each other, right? Right? Rich concludes by saying, life doesn't follow straight lines. It won't be a clean or simple story. It's going to get ugly from time to time. Some could argue this is an ugly hour of TV showing ugly people at their worst. I truly cannot convey how much I love it for that. It hurts, but it's beautiful, and it makes me feel less alone. That is the review of Unfinished Business from the great DM Philly of
People hire this guy to be your DM for D&D. He is just a master of words.
Go see him out at
before about
on your social media platforms, and yes, go hire him to play some Dungeons and Dragons. Mike and I play plenty of D&D with Philly, and it's the absolute best. Slide into his DMs however you can. If you're curious about tabletop role-playing games at all, hire that man because he's so good at what he does.
I mean, you joked about, well, maybe we won't get to the episode, but like, there's a part of me that thought like, well, that's probably the best thing. Anything better about the episode than you and I are going to over the next hour and a half.
That's the episode, basically. At least like the Lee and Kara stuff.
Right.
I think you can see this idea of we feel less alone together in a couple of other areas. Specifically, I think Saul and Ellen. Like, I think that Saul and Ellen, you see Ellen Ty in the flashbacks of this episode, and like they're kind of really sweet together. The two who are really sweet together, of course, are Bill and Laura, where we're going to talk about like a cabin on a stream and all of these different ideas. They're
the prequel to Cabin in the Woods.
They're basically just going to get like stoned together and just like lie down and stargaze. Like there's a lot of sweetness in this episode that also requires like cut men and corner men because we're boxing each other to death. You are not friends in the arena, as Bill Adama is going to say sometime after telling Chief, get your fat ass up here, because the two of them have some beef that they've got to work out. This is a character-focused episode. Certainly the extended edition is. If you love these characters, at least if you love these actors, I do think that this is a great showcase for them. I will say, I think it is in the same way that like Trisha Tanaka is a divisive episode of Lost, that even Expose is a divisive episode of Lost. I think that this like fits in that sort of category of, if you love Unfinished Business, you love it like DM Philly. And if you don't, you probably either forget it or rate it relatively low.
That being said, I encourage everybody who has the access to watch the unedited, unaired version of this. You know, as someone who accidentally, due to the ire behind his eyes, watched a little bit of the 44-minute version, I was really alarmed to see how chopped up and reorganized everything is. Now, listen, I would say one of the main detractors from this episode is the fact that a lot of the flashback stuff, well, maybe one of the best uses of flashbacks in BSG in general so far, is still relatively out of sync, and so does leave you relatively confused into the state of things. It's like there's media res, and then there's media res baked within the media res. It's like a media res turducken at that point. I do think that this episode, when given the room to breathe, has so many different dynamics play out, as opposed to the broadcast version, which had to essentially remove a half hour out of the way the episode originally was. If we're going at the rate of 1 minute a page, that is 30 pages just cut from it in general. And so I think this is a really interesting episode for obviously a lot of our characters. I think being able to really finally get a bit of an answer as to what happened with Starbuck and Lee that led to this separation and conflict and gap between them is answered. I think we finally get some stuff filled in about that I certainly want to know, which is like, hey, can we get a little bit of what happened in between, New Caprica being settled and the Cylons attacking? I think we get a much needed perspective from D after that relationship has kind of like been put on the back burner, and really does lampshade what I've been talking about all along, was that this was more so an obstacle than it
Yeah.
was an actual loving marriage. But I think this was a really great episode for characters like Bill Adama as well. That, we are pivoting from this really odd character beat that even a month and a half later, I'm still not sure about him believing that he firsthand caused the new Cylon War to happen. But him now taking a bit of guilt in a different manner of speaking, feeling like because he was a little soft and let these people go on and live
I was
their
soft.
lives, and
Yeah.
then the second apocalypse happened, and now he takes it all on the shoulders again. This is a character that is going to advise himself to take it easier on himself, but almost never believe his own advice. I think it's a really interesting episode for him, and obviously his relationship with Rosalind, something we also really haven't touched upon in a while. And so I am really glad we got this extended cut. This would be if BSG was a streaming show or just did not exist on television. These are the type of episodes I think we would usually get. Now, listen, brevity can sometimes be the soul of wit. That's why I am particularly witless when it comes to my podcasting. And I think that
Gonna
giving this up,
say, I guess we're not that witty. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you haven't figured it out at this point, I don't know what to tell you. But
Yeah.
I think that having this version that, to your point, is very much the Trisha Tanaka is dead of, in fact, probably falls in a similar place. I'm trying to remember what number episode of Lost that is. Must be like episode 8, 9, or 10. But to have what is essentially the biggest vibes episode of the show we've had so far, yes, you can boil it down to it's the boxing episode. We don't get any, major plot resolutions. We don't see Baltar or the Cylons outside of Athena in this episode. But I think it was such an important moment to hone in on a theme that we have really been circulating about since the very beginning, which is the enemy within. And not just from the fact that there are Cylon sleeper agents among us, but more so the idea of, we are trying to present a united front against this enemy that can sometimes be tough when we are at our impulses human beings that will have messy conflict with one another. Some of them might be externalized and physicalized within this underground boxing ring.
Yeah. All right, Mike, shall we talk more about this episode
Absolutely.
specifically? Okay, let's do it. Unfinished Business. It originally aired December 1st, 2006 in an edited capacity. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the bigger, chunkier episode. And it begins
the
with like
thick version.
thick version. It begins with so the opening in a lot of this episode, like Mike says, there's like lots of intercuts where we're hearing like this boxing match. We're in this boxing arena. We're also flashing back to New Caprica. So for example, we're with Adama. His toes are digging into the sand in New Caprica. We see that there's somebody's ear is bleeding in a boxing arena. We see that Starbuck is banging somebody. We don't know who. On the Galactica, Adama is telling D that half the crew is below decks. They're all getting their fighting in. D is going to go put her tags in. Putting your tags in means you're getting like summoned into the ring. We see more flashbacks, Mike. We see Starbuck and Sam are also having sex in the present, but also she's having sex with someone on New Caprica.
I can't believe I didn't think of this sooner, of like what would have been the immeasurable conflict to have Lee and Starbuck not on speaking terms for almost a year at that point. It made the most sense. Maybe because I believed too much in these two marriages that truly they were built to last. But I also loved, again, we'll talk about these sort of two separate timelines. I don't know if in order or chopped up like the episode did, but I also love this connector of the dance, right? This is how Dee and Adama are going to frame it to each other. It's what's going to be talked about just in parlance while they're even in the moment. And then, of course, in the flashback, we have a very different type of dance, but I think there's a lot of connective tissue as well in, like, as Dee will talk about later on, that the the opposite of, love not being hatred, it's passion. This idea of how both boxing and dancing involve a partner, that involve physical contact.
Fancy footwork.
Fancy footwork, exactly. Putting your hands up or all over each other. So I think it's a very fun, way to bring the past into the present, which is basically going to be the entire purpose of this episode, right? It's called Unfinished Business, and it's going to have Lee and Kara basically say, look, we know what happened a year and a half ago. The audience doesn't, but we do. We have to hash this out once and for all.
Once and for all. Okay, so Starbuck has a little adult sleepover with Sam.
In the bunks. Luckily, everyone else is gone. There weren't any people who stayed out of the dance.
Everyone else is dancing. She got what she wanted. Sam did not. Sam wants to resume their marriage. Sam would like the marriage to continue. Starbuck does not feel ready for that, and Sam's like, cool. Because that's probably because you don't want me at all, actually. You think you do, but you don't really. And she's like, well,
Kara says, no, that's Mike Bloom, not me.
She's like, well, you know what? I don't really want to talk about this right now. I think I'm going to go ahead and go to the dance myself. So she's going to go to the dance. She grabs her dog tag. She goes down, and we see the dance, and it's this boxing arena where Lee is fighting Hilo. It's Apollo versus Hilo. This is like when Rocky, I guess Apollo Creed.
I was gonna say, I mean, this is perfect, right? It's the end of.
This is like a reverse Apollo Creed, I think, because Apollo Creed is originally Lee's opponent, or originally Rocky's opponent, and then becomes Rocky's friend and trainer for a time. Lee and Hilo was Lee's trainer to get him to lose all the weight, and now they're fighting it out. It's a reverse Creed.
How much was Jamie Bamber salivating at this episode, right? Considering how much he understandably maligned the Lee Fatsuit arc. He's like, now I get to show off how jacked and cut I am by just beating up a bunch of people. I do wonder from the actor's perspective whether they enjoyed this episode or not, because I would imagine this kind of actually seemed like a very fun time. Even the most dramatic scenes are sort of punctuated by this boxing and allow them to do something different. Maybe they had a bit of a break as well. I will say, from the character's perspective, I have no idea why they are doing this. I mean, I guess joining the military, conscripting yourself, you are under some sort of belief system of like, sometimes I just want to hit something to get out my feelings. But admittedly, Josh, for a certain portion of time last year, end of 2022 into beginning of 2023, tried boxing.
Right, I remember.
And I got hit in the face once. And I said, no more. I'm out. Ding, ding, ding. 1, 2, 10. I'm out of the ring right now. And I walked away and I never looked back.
Yeah, I remember you showed up one time to a podcast with me and you had like a little bit of like a black eye, like kind of like like a bruised nose area.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, I think I'm a very easy target because like this is prime real estate right now. This is my beachside cabin with all the rooms contained inside. And so
that's like the kick me sign taped on the back, except it's on your face.
Yeah, exactly. That's how listen, that's you're very much describing the internet's relationship with me for the better part of 10 years. But I personally do not understand why people would take a lot of pleasure in it. That being said, people do, and it seems like by and large, a lot of these people not only love kicking ass, but more importantly, love their asses.
Oh, I thought you were saying taking names. Yeah.
I mean, I love just the shots that we'll get when we cut back from the past of just like someone absolutely knocked out cold lying in the ring. And then we'll see like Hot Dog on the side be like, yeah, get into it. It's like, don't you need a hospital? Sir, if I got hit as much as you...
That's why Doc Cottle is here, right? So Doc Cottle is involved.
Yeah, but he's enabling it. He's sitting there being like, woo!
Well, what's Doc Cottle going to do? No one's going to stop doing a thing because Doc Cottle told them not to. So he's at least here for all these people who are getting their asses kicked, and he gets to like weigh in. Well, like, he gets to like Dr. Joe this thing, right? And he gets to like medevac people from the ring. So like Hilo kicks the shit out of Lee, which I got to tell you, I'm not surprised by. Hilo's got reach. He's just like a larger guy.
And Hilo, remember, he is scrappy. Yes, he is a long character beat away from his time on New Caprica, but like
he survived all of that. He whipped Lee back into shape, so he knows Lee's body almost as well as Lee knows his own. Hilo has a really unfair advantage here. And you know what?
Not to mention he's also getting counseling from a Cylon, like a merciless killing machine as well, where Lee fittingly has nobody in his corner.
Lee has no one in his corner. Hilo has Athena in his corner, and I guess Lee said something about Hilo's like machine wife not terribly long ago.
Yeah.
That was kind of derogatory. So maybe Hilo just had a little bit of like, I'm gonna punch you in the face about that. So that's where they end up. So Lee leaves the ring. Colonel Ty is the Judge Mills Lane of the Big G. Let's get it on.
Now, listen, I get it, and he'll talk about later how, like, Adama put him in this position to, like, help get him back out in the public again, just so he doesn't stew in his own misery and alcohol. At the same time, I don't know if I'm boxing. If I want the man adjudicating the fairness of my bout to be someone whose vision is 50% limited.
You're saying one-eyed people can't be boxing refs, Mike? This is the tape that you're going to bring to episode.
Yep, you know what? This is where I take my stand. I apologize to one-eyed people. There's a small list of jobs that you're not able to perform. I would say being a boxing ring judge might be on that list.
A ring leader. Well, Ty, I think, is the perfect character for this because he just has big referee energy. So he's the ref here.
I'm obsessed with the way Michael Hogan had the delivery of a hot dog.
Yeah. Ty is incredible in this episode, I think. So Lee leaves the arena. He's going to grab his dog tag because you throw your dog tags into the thing, and that's how you get to fight. Starbuck's like, oh, you shouldn't leave here. Like, you got more fighting to do. And he goes, why don't you go find Anders? Oh, wait. Trouble in paradise. So they're finally talking, but it's very childish. Lee's asking, are you blaming me for your fracked up marriage? She says, you didn't help it get off to such a good start. She puts her dog tags in the bowl. Lee does as well. Lee wants to punch Starbuck badly.
Listen, this truly shows how far we've come in the future that, we're going to have men and women just boxing each other willy-nilly right now. Gender lines are promptly broken down. The only lines are that of the boxing ring. What is interesting is we learn in this exchange of dialogue that at least Starbuck blames Lee for the fact that her and Anders are on separate ships. This seems to be something that actually had happened as soon as the people from New Caprica had been picked up. So I don't know, maybe for Starbuck's perspective, it could have been a blessing in disguise as well, considering that she was in her own kind of fracked up place. But very interesting to take like a brave glimpse into that, because again, considering how we're going to see things end, she could very much try to draw a conclusion of, well, he's pissed because that one time I ran off and eloped rather than, wake up next to him. So he's taking his revenge out on me after all the torture I've gone through by separating me and my husband.
Yeah. Okay, Dee and Adama come downstairs. Dee is like, Lee, what are you doing here? If you really want a private tussle, we could go back to our room.
And he says, no, I prefer in the bunks.
Yeah. But then she sees that Starbuck is here, and she does not seem pleased about this. She's kind of getting a vibe. As we know, she has a big vibe on this, which I've got questions about later. Adama's going to check in with Ty. How's this going? Ty says, I'd rather be drinking in my rack, but this is fine. So he starts the next bout. There's more boxing that's happening. Rosalind's going to come to talk to Adama, and we see that they also have a conversation on New Caprica. She tells him on New Caprica when Adama has a sweet mustache. She says, I didn't expect to find you here playing in the sand. And then Rosalind's going to take off her shoes. He says it's not sand, it's alluvial deposits. And it's like, wow, alluvial deposits. Sounds
I alluvial you, Russell.
I alluvial you. So they're like flirting on New Caprica. And then here on the Big G, Rosalind shows up. She's heard about the fight. She wants to check it out. It's a connection with her dad. Her dad was into this kind of thing. Apparently, this is about getting out pent-up frustrations before they become full-on feuds. Rank doesn't matter. This is tradition. And she says, well, are you going to put your dog tags in? He says, nah, I'm not mad at anyone, Chief. And we look back at 18 months ago on the Big G, when Adama says, hey, Chief, congratulations. You're going to be a dad. It's going to be the first baby born on Galactica. And she's like, yeah, but what if it was a baby born on New Caprica? Like, could me and Callie, and Adama's like, no, you're not allowed to leave. So there's a little bit of tension here between Admiral and Chief.
I mean, also a little bad on Adama's part to not recognize Hera. So like, was she nothing to you? That was technically the first baby.
No, he's not allowed to say because she died, right? Wink.
Yeah, but like the baby was technically born. But I do think that from Chief's perspective as well, he might take that as a cautionary tale of like, yeah, maybe a sterile military vessel. He does try to, much like you did, lovingly so, Josh, provide his own silver lining to Callie later on by like, well, we'll have all the state-of-the-art medical facilities, at least on the ship. The downside being that you are on a military ship. And so, yeah, we do get this idea that despite the fact that it seems like things have decelerated, right? People are starting to settle on New Caprica. Adama is still trying to keep people close to him. And obviously, as we know from that cut forward, he obviously will lose that fight. And now we'll sort of find out why. But initially, at least, he is very much like, huh, no. Nobody's leaving right now. Because for all I know, the Brother Cabell was lying. The Cylons will be coming up. They'll catch us with our pants down. And I want to have all hands on deck if and when that happens. So, yeah, Adama's all hunky-dory right now in the present, which should also be noted as well that things are in a little bit of a state of disrepair. Dee is going to narrate to Adama in the first scene of this episode that, like, you know, they're missing shipments. You know, there are a bunch of birds that are being worked on that aren't flying. Like, yes, they are still on the run from the Cylons and making their way to Earth, but in many ways, the show is taking a break from all of that to pursue this dance.
Okay, we go to a flashback after Hot Dog and Starbuck are fighting, and Lee's watching from the sidelines. And Dee tells Lee a story about how when she was 6, a boy used to wait for her and knock her down, and her mom said it wasn't because I pissed him off, and it's clearly because like he liked me, is basically what she's saying. And she asks like, so what's this really about? Your like vendetta against Starbuck? And he says, she's been pissing me the frack off. So he's like basically saying like, we boned. You know, he may as well. And we see the story ourselves here, intercut throughout this episode. 17 months ago, Lee and Dee are going to New Caprica. They're admiring the fast construction of New Caprica. It's Founders Day, as Baltar is going to declare it. Dee has been allowed to transfer to the Pegasus. That's very good. There's an open bar down here. It's great. Hey, it's a double date. Sam and Starbuck are here. The whole thing is good. Sam and Lee, they're going to drink. Starbuck's going to show Dee the dance floor. It's a whole to do. Baltar breaks ground. Sam and Starbuck are flirting. What's up?
I love like that. I like, you know, our spare James Callis appearance here as he's like full Baltar Weasley presidential status, declaring this is a new tomorrow. And it cuts to everyone being happy and optimistic except for Adama, who is just glowering. You know, we go back and forth as to whether or not he has a poker face, but in this moment he could not hide A, the pure derision he has for this man, and B, the fact that, as was just talked about with Chief, like he does not want to settle down.
No,
he still feels there's a war to fight on the horizon.
Yes. Okay, Mike. We're still on the ground here in New Caprica. We see some dancing going on. Starbuck is like longingly looking at Lee.
Yeah, it's a fun way to bring back the Bear McCreary. I always call it like the Hobbit-esque use of strings, or like if you want to call it like the steerage scenes from Titanic, and they also complete with the slow-mo shots of the two of them circling around one another. That there's a lot of charged looks between the two of them, to the point that once they have some private time, like it's T-minus a minute and a half before Starbucks like, all right, like, can we just drop the guys here, stop drawing these imaginary walls, and promptly make them bump up and down with all the doings we're about to get under with?
There's a lot of doings that we're about to undergo. On Galactica, Starbuck is sparring with Athena. And then Athena's like, so Leodama? Like, she knows. Athena's got this. Dee's watching Racetrack and Cat fight it out. And says, hey, Lee, could you do me a favor and not fight Starbuck? And Lee's like, no, we got a score to settle. We got to do it. We're going to settle it tonight. Ty is watching all of this from the sidelines. He has a flashback to New Caprica. He asks Ellen, have I ever told you how glad I am that I married you? And she says, not once. And he says, I'll save it for a special occasion.
Like kiss. When I'm murdering you. Oh,
man.
It's tough. Though I will say, Ellen, it's still typical Ellen, considering there's a moment later where she, quote unquote, privately tells Starbuck, like, God, I'm thirsting after your soon-to-be husband so badly right now.
Yeah. Kate Vernon, terrific. However you feel about Ellen Ty, she's so good as this character. It's fun to see her here. On the Galactica, we're gonna. Is this around the? So Athena's asking like Starbuck about stuff, and she says that she's basically like, "Are you talking about Lee or are you talking about Zach?"
Yes, it's like she says that Lee has been making the same mistakes since the day they met. And Athena's like, are you talking about Zach? She says, well, first with Zach, then with Anders, which I think means to imply like basically he's been trying to get with me since those days when I was seeing his brother. And now that I'm with somebody else, it's this, continual pull and push where like when I'm available, you don't want me or you want me. But then once I end up shacking up with somebody, then I'm too hard to resist.
Okay, Adama's going to overhear from Chief that Chief is and Figursky.
Anthony Figursky's back, baby.
We got Figursky in the house here. See, no one cares. Figursky. We have Figursky here. Chief's like, go get a drink, Figursky.
Yeah, I would think actually Anthony Figursky looks more like the guy with be cast in the Wayne Knight role in Jurassic Park than the other guy, than Dodson.
Yeah. Adama's like, wait, there's a ship down? And she's like, yeah, but like everyone should get some R&R. We should just rest out. We should just be here. And Rosalind like looks at Adama like, really? You're gonna let him do that? You're gonna let him blow off some work to come to the dance? And then we go back to New Caprica. We see that Gaeta is talking to Rosalind and Adama. He's confident in their infrastructure plans, but then he has to go off to talk to the finance minister.
Wow.
Rosalind really didn't want to hear any of this. She doesn't care. She and Adama produce what the team behind the curtain writes in here as cigarettes from behind their back. Cigarettes is not in quotations or anything here.
I was going to say, these are very chaste on behalf of B&B here.
So just a huge shout out right now to the innocence of the team behind the curtain.
Sweet summer children.
As Rosalind is going to come into Adama and say, hey, Billy, I got some stuff you just gotta try. And Adama says, what is it? And Rosalind goes, pot, marijuana. And Adama goes, oh, I don't know. And Rosalind goes, what are you, chicken? And then Adama goes, I'm not a chicken. You're a turkey. And then the Ninja Turtles show up and say, he's right. Drug dealers are dorks. Don't even talk to them. Cowabunga.
Shout out to Cartoon All-Stars to the rescue. Real ones remember that. Winnie the Pooh will then public, oh, Adama, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. Winnie the Pooh is not allowed to talk, that honey fiend.
Listen, he knows firsthand about addiction. He knows it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
No, ironically enough, when honey, it's much less slippery.
Winnie, put some pants on before you start getting in my face about my.
Listen, as a sex freak, I know my way around. Yeah. Just one taste can't stop you.
Why do you think he keeps getting stuck in that tree? So anyway, so Rosalind says, "Yeah, there's some good shit down here." Do you think she like laced the pot with alluvial deposits? Is that I don't know.
Truly good stuff?
I don't know what it is, but that's what she does. And she says, "Hey, let's go toke some dope."
I love also
the olds say.
I mean, I guess they're feeling a certain way about Gaeta. The fact that like they are not happy with Baltar winning the election.
Gaeta are not happy with Gaeta.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably pretty pissed at him for like immediately jumping on board with his administration, but he has immediately become this square, right? Where he's like talking to them about bureaucracy bullshit, and the minute he turns his back, he's like, what a stiff tie, am I right? Come on, let's toke these doobies.
Toke the Dubes. All right. The celebration. They sneak off. The dancing continues. Dee's gonna leave. Lee says why, and she says, "Well, we've been catching looks. People are looking at us, and we've been keeping this off the radar so that I could get transferred to Pegasus. So let's not blow it." And she says, "But you stay." He says, "No, I don't want to stay without you." She says, "No, you should. I've never seen you so happy. Stay, get drunk." And tomorrow I'll report to my new commander in a private.
Yeah, so it should be as a reminder here that, again, the Lee and D stuff snuck up on us out of nowhere, basically. Besides like the longing glances they had with each other while Billy was still in the picture. Maybe Starbuck's right. Maybe Lee does have a type, and it's someone who is mutually exclusive with somebody else, as he tries to put a quotations around.
Lee's not happy unless he can steal someone away, I think.
Yeah, he is Mr. Steal Your Girl incarnate. But she basically trying to keep this relationship undercover, especially due to the fact that she has now been transferred to the Pegasus, which, remember, before it was exploded, Lee was the commander of. He was separate from his father on the Big G. And so they were basically waiting to get her transferred so then they could canoodle with each other much more privately. And as I said, Lisa got too much joy juice inside of him, and he's doing a little bit too much PDA. And she says, you know what? I'm not really going to have
I don't want a PDA in front of everybody. And that's fair. So she leaves.
Put the D in PDA.
Adama and Rosalind, they're going to go stargazing. Adama sings a little bit. Rosalind tells Bill, like, this is how I want us to spend the rest of our days.
I mean, she asks, is this how they're going to spend all their days? And he doesn't respond, but there's this look. And again, this is why I was so happy that I watched the extended cut, because of this storyline in particular. Like, Everett James Olmos and Mary McDonnell are so
and Dad.
good. And I feel like it's been such a long time since we've had like a really emotionally meaningful scene between these two. We've occasionally stopped in, even when something as recent as the season 2 finale with like, oh, I know you tried to rig the election. We can't allow that to happen. But like, this is such a warm series of moments between the two. And the fact that when Rosalind asks that question, Bill doesn't respond, but you can read the answer just from the look that they share before averting their gaze back up to the stars. That is like the pinnacle of acting.
It's cute.
In my opinion. It is so, so cute. And then you could also tell, as we'll see in the present, that like Bill Adama tries to take everyone's opinions into account. But in my opinion, there is only one that he truly holds like in parallel to his own, as like, all right, there's really only one person that could really get in my ear and advise me what to do. And it is Laura Roslin. And so to get a reminder of that, especially since, again, they spent the first part of the season completely separated from one another. And, Rosalind's going to convince Adama explicitly later on, like, come on, let the kids repopulate themselves on this planet. But she's even right now talking lovingly about like, I've settled down here. I'm going to find a nice cabin for myself and try to live the life that I've wanted ever since all the colonies were attacked. I think it does reframe Adama's focus to be that these are not mindless soldiers. These are people, and people do deserve the right to have release, to have recreation, which is what directly translates to the dance in the present.
There's this conversation, just to skip ahead, on New Caprica where Rosalind's saying like, we should enjoy this while we have it, and Adama's like, people are leaving the ships though, and Rosalind's like, can't blame them. Like, we can't just like go around in circles waiting for another apocalypse. It happened before. There's nothing we could do to stop it. There's nothing we could do to stop it again, as we'll find out a couple months from this moment. Rosalind tells Adama, life's a bitch and then you die. She says it. Life's a bitch and then you die.
And she says YOLO, basically, in a manner of speaking. I love this so much. I mean, this has kind of been talked about in prior episodes. And look, it has certainly been talked about a bunch on this very podcast, that for me, at least, and I know this is not the case for everybody, there is power in admitting your powerlessness that I have certainly fallen into my own mental lapses of thinking that there's so much going on in the world. I want to be able to like fix it so everyone feels okay. I want to be able to solve all these problems, but there is a lot of magnanimity that comes in the ability to realize that is not feasible, that you will drive yourself crazy and make yourself miserable if you just try to live every minute running through all the worst case scenarios in your heads, trying to prepare for everything, when the inevitability is that you will be taken by surprise by
Yeah.
at least one thing. That is life. We are not Cylons. We are not computer programs that can run through the algorithm and a list of scenarios and prepare for everything thusly. Because you even see from the Cylons, there are circumstances and viruses that even they could not prepare for. And so the way to live life is not to say not to bring those into consideration, but, if you are Hilo, focus on what's within your reach. And
Yeah.
sometimes that might be Liadama, and sometimes that might be the air of the boxing ring. But focus what you can put your arms around, what you can have an impact with, that you can firsthand put your efforts towards and say, okay, I'm making the world a better place, or I'm making my home, my family better through these small incremental micro measures, as opposed to thinking that you have the widest grasp in the world and that you can essentially grab everything and feel you can do everything at once. I think it is such a refreshing opinion that I know I certainly need expressed to me multiple times, especially when you feel the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And I think it is so illuminating for Laura Roslin to talk about it here, for her to talk about it from this perspective of, in the wake of some incredibly brutal circumstances, you could really go in one direction. You can go in the Adama direction, which is like, shit, it might happen again, so we have to stay extra vigilant. Or the Roslin perspective, which is like, I survived this once, and even though I'd like to stay alive, I'm kind of living like I'm on borrowed time right now, like I'm playing with house money, because the truth of the matter is, we shouldn't have survived this, let alone gotten to a spot where we feel safe enough to have settled down somewhere and start over again.
Let's start puffing reefer
Yeah.
riverside.
And
Yeah.
the irony of all of this is that despite her having the more, opinion of clarity, it all is promptly reversed in the reality, right? That Adama, who had been doing all this preparation, had been hovering in the air with this ghost ship, is proven right when the Cylons come back. And that Roslin, yes, I'm sure she had a great time in those, 17 months in her cabin teaching those children. But then the Cylons attacked and things became miserable again. On the one hand, you could say, like, okay, well, this proves that maybe you do want to stay hyper vigilant. But on the other hand, I don't know, I'm much more of a journey than a destination person in general. And it's just such a reminder to me to take things as they are, how they come, rather than spending your minutes worrying about what the next one is going to occupy. Focus on the 60 seconds that are ahead of you.
A couple other things are going down. One is that on the Galactica, Adama challenges Chief to go into the ring. He says, "Chief, get your fat, lazy ass up here." So fat shaming Galen Tyrrell.
Who are you, my son?
So Chief tells Kai, like, all right, this will be fun. He's not serious. And then Adama starts beating the shit out of Chief. He starts kicking his butt. Lee and D are very nervous about this. And Chief is getting his butt kicked. And Adama says, "Is this how you fight for your life? Show me a soldier." And so they start again, and Chief starts beating the crap out of Adama. So that's going down.
Without saying too much, Josh, this is very end of season 2 of Squid Game coded. Of like,
Sure.
wow, he's actually getting into pits. Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay. And like you could see that even from the reaction of the crowd as we cut back to it one of these times, that once Tyrrell eventually like gets up to 100% and realizes what's happening, he absolutely wails on this man. EJO has been able to defy, the age with which he occupies, but it only gets you so far as Tyrrell lands the knockout and then some eventually.
Let's talk about Starbuck and Leah. Leah here, is they're gonna, their spouses or at least partners are not really here. Sam's drunk and passed out. D has left. Lee and Starbuck's like, it's just us now. Well, let's keep the party going. So they go to this really empty area. This is where they're going to build a house. She tells Lee, war's over. I'm not fighting anymore.
Feed the world.
Lee's like, so where I'm standing, what part of the house is this? She says, that's the bedroom. He's like, I don't want to think about that. And he's like, all right, well, tell me about the life of Kara Anders. What's that going to be like? She's like, I'm not going to get married. And Lee's like, why not? Don't you love him? Don't you love him? Is this really who you want to be spending the rest of your life with? And Kara says, well, do you have someone in mind? And Lee says, tell me you're not afraid. What if I upset the apple cart? I want to upset your apple cart. Starbucks says, maybe my apple cart wants to be upset. And then they bone. And then they kiss and they frack. They frack.
Listen.
And it's one episode past the point. But again, technically, this is happening within episode 33, Mike. So take some cold comfort.
Everything has happened before. Everything will happen again. Well, and again and again and again.
Schrodinger, Starbuck, and Lee having sex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Yes, the pure concept of this scene disgusted me for pure timing purposes, as you put it. But the scene itself is utterly delightful. Like, at my core, the reason why I made the bet in the first place, Josh, why I built myself up to it is because
you're like DM Philly. You're shipping Lee and Kara hard.
Listen, I could understand the comments about them being in a toxic relationship, but like they just have such a unique dynamic together. Like, they are the only ones that can truly get under each other's skin. Like, even for Kara Thrace, the Cylons were not able to do it for months in prison. But Lee Adama is the one to really get in there. Should have brought Lee in, honestly, to torture her if they truly wanted to do it, because it's not even obviously the torture, as we'll get to in the boxing ring, but like, it's just the joy, Josh, like the unmitigated glee between the two of them. Glee Adama, just like maybe kind of squee Adama, especially in this like post-coitus stuff when they just look completely different. Starbuck in particular, and especially, you know, the tragedy knowing what she is about to undergo in a year and a half once the Cylons end up taking her. Like, she is cackling at Lee's naked yelling to the stars like he's Mike Bloom at the beginning of this podcast about how much he loves Kara Thrace. Like, she is gutturally laughing. I know that Dee says this is the happiest she's seen Lee in a while. I would say that's even more so for Starbuck, who is one of the most like grim, snarky, glum characters on the show. When they deliver these lines to each other, albeit trepidatiously, which again is another fantastic facet of Starbuck's character, when they kiss and she's like, are you sure I'm what you want?
Yeah.
And he affirms it. And he has this, I don't know, beautifully expressed sentiment that, and maybe it's a bit from me speaking from personal experience, but like this idea of how you don't really know what love is until you meet it. Like, yes, you can hear it be described to you from so many movies and songs and even other parties, but like once you actually feel that residual warmth inside of you, it's impossible to describe. And I very much sympathize with Lee's, again, in the moment reaction to, oh, I did not realize that I desired, to your point about the themes of this episode, this much companionship until now. That he was someone who was a solo fighter pilot, right? Like, there's only one room in this cockpit. It's for me. I don't really need anybody else. And this is a guy who has been, ironically enough, trying to build community as a CAG amongst these pilots while really pushing himself out on an island from a romantic and interpersonal perspective. And so for him to have this realization of like, no, this has not made me more powerful of a person. In fact, it's more of a weakness than a strength. And I realize that you are the person that can bring me this comfort. I find it so incredibly beautiful. The fact that they do confide in each other, these vulnerabilities that they haven't with any other character on this show. I think the chemistry between Katie Sackhoff and Jamie Bamber is absolutely chef's kiss. It builds to this moment as well, where it feels like a natural segue, where they just drop all the guys of walking through Barbie's dream house and they're like, what are we doing here? And then again, I just can't get enough of the scene after my hopes and dreams went up in flames, as they were talking about, you know, truly turning over a new page in their relationship.
He's going to tell Dee, she's going to tell Sam, they'll yell it to the skies. He literally does. My name is Lee Adama, and I love Kara Thrace. And she does her version of it. And so she yells at it. And basically they're like, is this really what you want? They're both like, yeah, I just didn't know until I said it out loud. She's like, were you hesitant because of Zach? He's like, a little, but I was also hesitant because I was afraid to admit I needed anyone. She says, yeah, me too.
Yeah,
And they
like
share
that's
more I love yous.
and again, I don't think this is like being swept up in the moment. Like I think this is actually bubbling to the surface feelings that they have always had that
Yeah.
everyone else is calling out. And so it makes what happens next not even more tragic, but also even more inevitable. That as we'll get pointed out at the end of this episode, that there will be an inevitable reconciliation in a manner of speaking that at the heart of it, these two, I imagine, will always love each other because they see in the other person not only sort of a compliment, but a supplement, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Someone that is similarly kind of broken the way that they are, but also, for lack of a better term, also kind of fills the holes that,
Wow.
the other does not occupy. They sort of have their own language that they speak with each other and nobody else on the show. And that's why I kept saying a bunch, that I was hopeful we'd finally address what led to this conflict because again, this feels like such a rich relationship to me that I think kind of got eschewed in season 2 in lieu of some like pretty dang cringy conflict scenes between them where a lot of low blows were taken, ironically enough, as we're going to get into a sequence that is full of low blows. But this just goes to prove how, honestly, and again, I understand the label of a toxic relationship, but these two are so fracking good for each other. Like they
I
are
don't know.
perfect for each
Yeah. I
other.
mean, they're fracking good on screen for sure. But then we go to the present and like they're watching Adama and Starbuck is like saying, I wish that you had Adama's chops, but you don't, to Lee. And Dee's like, why are you guys fighting all the time? Get a room. And Starbuck says, been there, done that. And Dee's like, yo, frack that. No, not going to hang for this. And Lee's like, hey, no. It was a long time ago. And Dee says, settle your issues tonight. She knows, and she does not like this.
I mean, but as we'll find out in the flashback, she's been known. She has always kind of had this on her mind that this was her own worst case scenario. But much like Laura Roslin suggested, you can only prepare yourself so much for the unknown as to what's to come. Instead, just focus on what's in the moment, which is this like happy, quote unquote, healthy marriage to Leah Dama. But all her suspicions are confirmed when Starbuck walks back into his life, and it's like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen. I mean, I didn't know that would happen, but I knew things would eventually come to blows here. And my heart really does go out for not only the character, but the actress as well, who, to be candid, Josh, just kind of feels like more of a plot device than a character at this point. I think there were some interesting moments from her in season 1, but I don't know. I feel odd about the way that she's been utilized in
Sure.
seasons 2 and 3. She's got a little bit of like that James Marsden in The Notebook energy of like,
Yeah.
she tries to make it work, but we know it's not meant to be.
Candace McClure is the
Candace
actress who
McClure.
plays Duala.
Hi, I'm Candace McClure. You might remember me from such cucked roles as Dee in Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica. Okay, let's resolve Chief versus Adama. We find out that like Adama let Chief live on New Caprica, and he's like clearly like regretting this quite a bit, and he's like taking out his shit on Chief. And eventually he just like lets himself get the shit kicked out of him. And Chief helps him up, and everyone's not having fun anymore. And Adama
They're
says,
like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we shouldn't
yeah.
watch an old man get punched in the face a bunch of times. Are we the baddies?
Adama tells them, if you step into the ring when you're on the deck, you got to be ready to fight. And when you fight a man, they're not your friend anymore. The same is true when you lead men. And I lost sight of that. And me losing sight of that, letting the crew disband, that cost lives. It can't happen again. Can't happen again.
Yeah, so...
And Chief's like, come on, Figursky. Let's get out of here.
It's kind of an odd conclusion to come to, but so in character for Adama, right? Again, 1 episode ago, this is the guy who said, the entire series is my fault. I'm so sorry. I made sure that the Cylons blew up all the colonies. Like, of course this is the guy to take this all on him saying, I gave you too much shore leave. And now, as a result, so many people died. When, again, maybe it's a healthier perspective to take the Rosalind POV of like, the Cylons were coming no matter what. There was, even if you were stocked to the nines, there was really no way you could have prepared for it, nor would you want to be in the state of hypervigilance to sit there for a year and a half with nothing to do, with no one to fight. People need to naturally move on with their lives. I mean, that said, it is interesting for him to kind of eschew tradition in a way and use himself maybe as a bit of the guinea pig of like, see how this isn't fun to do? It shouldn't be. You know,
No.
we should not be letting our guards down. Much like, see how I did it literally and I let Chief punch me in the face? I was the guinea pig. Don't be like me. Don't get punched in the face a bunch of times. Everyone get back to work. And it sort of straddles this line of how much of like a traditionalist but non-traditionalist Adama is. Very Jean-Luc Picard or Captain Kirk, if you will, in that like he obviously follows the rules of order as much as he can, but he's also willing to kind of work outside the lines to fit something where, again, this is something that is a military tradition to blow off steam. But I think Adama realizes that this is far from a traditional standpoint they're in right now. And that if this is another way to have them dance in a manner of speaking, that the music's going to cut very soon. And that this is not the best way for them to use their time. So yeah, maybe it's not going to necessarily help the the downtime aspect of what's going on, but we only have so many episodes to fill in this season, Josh. We got to get back to work.
Let's get back to work. And let's close out this episode with Starbuck versus Lee Adama. That's what's going to happen now. We're disbanding the fight. Starbuck's like, oh, you had the guts to frack another man's woman, but not fight one, huh? Does Dee know what she was getting into? Lee punches Starbuck in the face. He agrees to fight.
Which is what you wanted, right? Like this
It's
is
what you wanted.
Instigation 101.
So we're gonna get the rest of this sort of intercut again. Lee and Starbuck in the arena. They're gonna box it out. Dee comes back to watch this, but we also see the morning after. And in the morning after, Lee wakes up. He's alone. Starbuck is back in town where Sam is still passed out. Ty is nearby. Ellen is passed out. Ty tells Starbuck, secret to avoiding hangovers, never stop drinking. So Ty and Kara share a drink. It's the first drink she's ever had with him. Must be a special occasion, he says.
I mean, does it count if they're like both in the same room drinking separately? It has to be like very
not.
much.
This is
hey, let's drink
together.
Drink.
They're sharing a drink. She tells Ty, I slept with Lee. And he laughs like a hyena. He loves it. She's like, it's not funny. I'm such an idiot. And he can't stop laughing. Like she's like, I gotta figure this out. I gotta do something here. And Ty says, look, this is actually a lot like combat. Your survival instincts are gonna kick in. You gotta make a choice and not look back. So I guess this is where Ty and Kara became friends, Mike.
Yeah, but like this is who you should have become friends with at this moment. Like it's infuriating, but at the same time understandable that Ty says this relationship is a lot like a wartime conflict. Like this is a man who has been hardened by battle, will continue to do so, unfortunately, on New Caprica. It makes all the sense in the world that he would treat it like that, but it is the exact opposite of how it should be treated of like, this is like a gangrenous limb. You cut your loss. It's like losing an eye. You put a piece of gauze over it, and then you move on with your life. When he does not know the details. In fact, he openly mocked and laughed at the details. And it's just a cold bucket of water after, again, the warmth that was celebrated the previous night, where, again, I felt these two were truly spoken from the heart. Yes, after they do, do the deed, Kara immediately says this got a lot more complicated.
They both woke up with some measure of regret, it seems like. She woke up, she left him behind. She goes and tells Ty what's going on, and Ty is like, well, you just got to figure this out. Lee wakes up alone, and when he finds Dee, he immediately kisses her. So much for keeping a lid on things is what she says. He's like, let's get out of here. So they both in the morning are having that like morning after regret. But it gets a little more intense when Lee finds out from Adama that Starbuck got married an hour ago. She found a priest and got married by the river. And Lee is like really upset.
Yeah, you could feel like, and I don't know if it was also maybe some of the alcohol coming back up, but like the disgust on his face. I will also say maybe
He
this
walks
is
up to them and Sam's like, yeah, what do you think? She woke up. She proposed to me. We got it done. It was her idea. And Lee's like, oh, it was your idea. Sam's like, yeah, she proposed to me. Isn't that cool? Defying gender norms. And Lee says, well, Sam, good luck. You're gonna need it.
Yeah,
He's pissed. They're pissed.
And that's the thing is that
One night in paradise, Mike, and that's it. That's all we get.
Maybe it's just the fervent Lee Adama defender in me. But like, yes, you say that they both have regrets. I think if they woke up together, Lee Adama would not have gone to D. I think he
I think
takes
that's probably right.
what Kara did as a sign of like, oh, I guess that was all bullshit. Like, okay, great. She's still Starbuck at the end of the day. She left me behind. And all of this, to your point, is going to be compounded. Lee's going to accelerate his relationship, really jump to make his own jump in a manner of speaking. There are no jumps in this episode, but maybe a jump forward in his relationship with D by being like, well, I guess that is done. And that it's this idea that, again, things are about to get complicated, that I suppose it's meant to say that they existed in their sort of la la land fantasy of we can walk off into the sunset happily ever after. And then the harsh reality of their lives come back in and the separate relationships that they maintained. I mean, this is a storyline we've seen time and time again in pop culture as well. Just all the complexities that are contained within relationships, especially when you seek out other partners, but then like the star-crossed lovers find each other again in each other's lives. And what do they do with that? I will admit I felt more for Lee than Starbuck here. I do feel like Starbuck, I don't think that Starbuck didn't care about Sam. I think that's one reason why she does decide to marry him. I don't think it was necessarily just like a business transaction. I do think she legitimately had feelings for him. It's why she made that entire movement in season 2 to be like, we got to go back to Caprica. We got to go back for Sam. I don't get it, but certainly something was going on with her. At the same time, I think that Ty unfortunately served as that kind of devil on her shoulder, being like, it could never work. They're mocking the idea. You were such like a giggling schoolgirl thinking it could ever work with Lee Adama.
I don't think that he has like the worst advice here, though. I
disagree.
I don't think it's the worst advice on the planet. I think that he's kind of like, you guys are nuts. Like, either do it or don't. You know, he basically says like your survival instincts will kick in. Make a choice. You know, like I don't think like he's like necessarily pushing her one way or the other. Yeah, I don't think he's like pro Sam or pro Lee.
I mean, he did openly laugh for 30 seconds.
Because it's hilarious. It's ridiculous that happened. I think that it is ridiculous that it happened.
I don't think it, I mean, listen, considering the stake that I put in, I did not think it was ridiculous. It was inevitable at a certain point. It was just a matter of when it would happen.
Yeah. Well, it's happened. And now we've got Lee and Starbuck fighting each other in the ring. And they're talking to each other in there. It's like, you only got one rule: protect yourself at all costs. You never let anyone in. She's like, well, I made my choice. And he's like, you ran away. So they're like fighting it out. And Sam shows up. He's like, hey, D, what's going on? And D says, well, what does it look like? And Sam says, oh, it looks like they're trying to kill each other. And D says, well, that's one way of looking at it.
In the Shakespearean sense, that is for sure. I also love that, again, the low blows become literal as they just start kicking each other. Josh, I would say they've gone full MMA, except I'm pretty sure the octagon isn't allowed in BSG because there are corners to it.
Yeah. D and Lee in the past, they leave and in their ship on their way back, Lee says, hey, so Starbuck and Sam got married this morning. I was thinking we could do that too. You want to get married to me? And D says, here's the problem. You love Starbuck. And he's like, what? No. And she says, yeah, you do. And he goes, no. And she says, look, I'll marry you. I want to live every moment like it's the last. I will love you. I will cherish you until the Cylons come back, or Starbuck does.
Yeah, considering that she puts them on the same level.
And he's like, wait, no, I don't, I'm not, but I don't. She's like, just kiss me. D, what are you doing? You're almost there. You're like, yeah,
you can do so much better.
You're in love with someone else. I don't want to be a part of that. And instead she's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll marry you, even though I know you're in love with someone else and you'll divorce me if you ever get back together with Starbuck. It's
Yeah,
like, what are
like,
we doing here?
I mean, she's trying to take a little bit of the Rosalind chronic of like live every day like it's your last,
YOLO.
but like I don't know if it's on her bucket list to get married, if that's it, because otherwise, yeah, you don't need to settle.
I don't want to victim blame D
Unlike the
here.
people on New Caprica, you don't need to settle.
D's getting cheated on. I don't love it for D at all. But D
Yeah.
then also says, like, you love Starbuck. Of course I'll marry you. It's like, what are we talking about? Like, it's not even subtext. You're just saying it out loud. You're going to marry.
And like, do they ever have that conversation after that? Because again, it's a year and a half. Like, do they do it a number of times? And she's
I don't
like, was I
know.
better than Starbuck?
I don't know. But anyway, the episode ends with Lee and Starbuck. They're like alone. They can't even fight. They can't even talk. He holds her. She says, let me go. He says, I can't walk. I don't know if I can walk. And she says, you busted my nose. Lee says, let's call it a tie. They continue to
And he says,
embrace.
yes, would somebody call my name?
Sam leaves. They both tell each other how much they missed each other. Lee tries to kiss her. She says, not now. D looks on. They collapse to the floor. The surviving number of humans, 41,420. That is the extended cut of Unfinished Business, Mike.
Was that the other number from the previous episode as well, or did someone die in the ring and we didn't?
I don't know.
It?
I don't know if there were any deaths.
What happened to
in the
Spank?
ring.
Did you hear that one of the people that was called up to box was Spank?
Yeah, in other words, Tiny.
Yeah, so maybe one of Spank or Tiny died. We talk about this all the time, but like, what did you do to earn the call sign of Spank? I don't even want to know, and that's saying something.
I think you know. All right, MVPs and LVPs. You've got 3 MVPs. I've got 3 LVPs, and like we're kind of mirror images of each other here. I'm going to run down the list real quick. You're giving a point to Rosalind, which I assume is because she's got that dank nug.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, I want a little bit of that stuff. So Rosalind, if you want to slide into my DMs. No, I mean, I think she, and then again, I think she gives really sage advice to Adama of
like, who I'm giving a point to. I'm going to give one to Bill.
Yeah. I think that makes sense as well of just like, let these people go. You're holding on to a lot of your own anxieties and neuroses and kind of taking it out on these people, holding them hostage on the ship when they just want to start families. Live a little, Bill, by letting them live a little.
Let them live. Okay, so I'm giving one to Adama. You're giving one to Rosalind. And now we get into some counterpoint. I'm giving one to Colonel Ty because I think he's such a great Judge Mills Lane here. I love him as a referee. Mike, I assume you're giving Ty an LVP point because he ruined your your precious Lee Buck.
100%. I'm a vindictive bitch. And
I get it.
You're on my list.
I get it. You're giving D an MVP point. I'm giving her an LVP point for openly walking into a marriage in which she knows the husband is in love with another woman. I don't love it. I don't think it's great.
And I'm giving her...
Let me be clear that I will also be giving Lee an LVP point for poor conduct towards poor Duala. I don't love this.
Yeah.
Don't like it.
It's a bad look. I will...
Duala did nothing wrong.
Yeah, and I gave D an MVP point because this is a little bit of like, for those who remember our season 1 Days of Lost, it's a bit of like the Stewart's memorial points for just kind of feeling bad for a character. Yes, to your point, more so than Anders, she is someone that acknowledged the situation yet still moved ahead with it. At the same time, I do still feel terrible for her in the present day of this episode. It's like she basically has to watch these two characters openly face the fact that they slept together behind her back. Yes, they were married at that point, but like these have not been necessarily aired out into the open until now. And she basically has to like sit there and let it happen. She tries to talk Lee out of it and it is no use. And she's basically watching the semblance of her marriage crumble in front of her. I will give Lee an MVP point. This might be a little controversial because he was the one to maybe initiate a lot of that post-coitus stuff of like I'm going to openly declare my love for you. And so maybe it's my support of him there. Maybe it's the fact that I do feel like he would have gone along with it if Starbuck hadn't woken up and left and chosen violence in or getting married in a priest down by the river. But I do feel for Lee in the past. The present, to your point, I think that he is in bad form, and so I think he should get canceled out here. But I do think of the two, it is fitting to me that Rich writes in particularly about how Starbuck is an incredibly complicated character because once again, I feel like this is an episode full of self-sabotage on her part.
We both bombed Starbuck, though.
I know, I hate it.
We both gave Starbuck an LVP point.
Like, I would love for this to be a wash, and I don't want to have Starbuck get docked 2 points while Lee ends up nooching out. It doesn't feel great. At the same time, she does elope. She does say, well, I made my decision. Come on, Sam, we're going to the chapel and we're going to get married.
I think I like they're both broken people. I think that they do both feel less alone together. I just wish that they had felt less alone together after having maybe some adult conversations with Anastasia Duwala and Samuel Anders. That would have been fine. I think that would have been great. No major changes on the MVP list. Sharon, Agatha, and Athena still at the top with 6.
She was one of the rare people to escape, like, without, showcasing her broken personality in this episode. Athena's like a fantastic person to have along ringside, whether you're Hilo, whether you're trying to be like the verbal.
She's a good come with gal, like a come with Cylon. She's pretty good. Speaking of Cylon versus the Fleet, who won every week? The Cylons aren't really here.
NA, baby.
I think it's a tie though, because I don't feel like the Fleet really win anything.
Yeah, I still think. I mean, I still think it's NA. I think that's sort of like our 4th category, right? That kind of counts into the tie.
Do we have any NAs? I think that just counts.
We had an NA last season, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll put it as an NA. We'll see what the jury says. We can go back and look, and we can always put this as a tie later if we needed to. We've got overall 19 for the Fleet across the series, 11 for the Cylons. 9 Colonel ties, and I have here now 1 NA. Mike, rating the episode, I want to give the floor to you. I know DM Philly would give this a 4.2. I don't really have a strong feeling other than I know how much he loves it, and I'm just going to stand in for him here and give DM Philly's 4.2 as my score. I don't really necessarily feel this way. I have a lot of respect for this episode, and I have even more respect for the great Rich Filiberto. So allow me to represent him with my 4.2. Where would you land with Unfinished Business?
Here's the thing. This is an episode of television that,
certainly
stay with me, folks, takes a big swing, especially in the extended version. Again, in a very propulsive show like Battlestar Galactica, we are really settling in for a very different episode where we're basically bottling. It's all about bottles, essentially. It feels like a bottle episode in that the present takes place in one location. There certainly is the bottom of a bottle that these characters find and end up falling in with each other. Bottled up emotions are boiling to the surface. And so I could understand why people might not like it, especially if you look at like the log line of it, right? Of like, everyone boxes each other, and we find out that Lee and Starbuck boinked before they ended up going their separate ways. Seems like a bit of a nothing burger, especially if you are trying to figure out what's going on with the Cylons. When are we finding Earth? It would be excruciating to settle down into this. I also feel like, I do think, again, the use of flashbacks here was pretty good. It's a low bar with flashbacks in BSG. Unfortunately, we've talked about this a couple times, how obviously they don't utilize them with as much aplomb as Lost did, but there are still some odd things, like how they showed the whole tie advice scene, like at the beginning of the episode, but also at the end of the episode, to be like, how did we get here? I didn't necessarily feel that was the case or necessary. And then to your point, sometimes when you question some of these character decisions, knowing what happened, it makes them look worse upon reflection, which is sometimes a good thing, sometimes not. Josh,
Mike,
my hands are tied right now.
Colonel tied?
Because here's the thing. Whatever we might believe is out there. A he, a she, a they, in a plural sense or in a singular sense. Clearly, something was at work. Something set up the cosmic dominoes in a certain way for me at this point 2 years ago to say, these characters are going to do it at a certain point. And for me to give a deadline of 31 episodes.
Mhm.
And then for either myself or you, depending on the details, to then give another 10 episodes to give a little additional leeway, and then missed it by that much. That after all this prognosticating, after weeks upon weeks of checking in after every episode as to my barometer, checking in as to whether or not I think it would happen between all of these gives and takes, between all these near calls. Remember when she had a dream about it? Remember when it was actually Baltar? Remember when they were about to do it and then Lee opened his stupid mouth and they stopped doing it? For all that to culminate in this actually coming to be one episode after the kibosh was put in on it, all I can do is look at the great planners, the architects, the arbiters of my fate, and say, you have won. I am at your submission.
That's a 4.2, I think, folks.
That is a 4.2. I can't help it. I cannot.
A momentous episode of Battlestar Galactica, a momentous episode of Down the Hatch.
This is like a 4.2, not only for this episode of the podcast, of the show, this episode of my life.
Yeah.
They say BSG meets you where you are.
Yeah.
And this is where it met me, where I had to take a good hard look at the mirror and think about my place on this tiny blue and green marble.
This pale blue dot.
Exactly. That just exists, that hangs out in space, and think for a second, Mike Bloom, things have figured themselves out in a certain way. You have to memorialize this moment, this time in your life, because to Laura Roslyn's point, there might be a time when I can never take this back.
That's right.
And hold on to this, much like Lee and Starbuck at the end. Embrace it, bloodied, exhausted, for as long as I can before I collapse on the floor. And so consider me to embrace unfinished business, flaws and all, for what it is, and give it a perfect score.
And consider me Miles Davis. Thrilled with that, Mike. We've got our first double 4.2 stint exodus. Wow. A great episode of Battlestar Galactica that I don't know is like this great, but I think that circumstances have fallen in such a way that we have no choice but to stand, as they say. Concluding our business, finishing our unfinished business here. First of all, I'd just like to correct myself. I believe I keep calling this season 3 episode 8. It's season 3 episode 9. I don't know why I can't get that out of my head.
I mean, you could have counted the 2.
I said this at a production meeting the other day, and Jess Sterling, who edits and posts the podcast, was like, "Wait, we already did 308." It was like, "No, we're about to," and she looked like she had just like new cap, like
giving her a heart attack,
like invaded again, and it's like. Oh, sorry. No, that's my mistake. She's like, okay, cool. It's 309.
I mean, to be fair, I'll give you your silver lining. Remember, Occupation and Precipice are, I think, billed as one episode under Amazon for you.
Part 1, part 2, whatever. I keep calling it 308. It's 309. 10 fracks, not including the big one. Lee fracks 4 times. Starbucks fracks 3 times.
I didn't realize we were counting.
And that may have been the actual numbers. Chief gets 2 fracks. Hilo gets a single frack here as well. There are 70 fracks in season 3 thus far, 281 fracks across Battlestar Galactica. Mike predicted that Starbuck and Apollo would frack within 41 episodes. Here it is, 42.
I can't be mad at it, unfortunately. But Josh, allow me to bring up an addendum.
Sure.
Here.
Yeah.
Because look, we had an extended break.
You have some unfinished business yourself?
Exactly. Due to extenuating circumstances. So there are a couple of hanging chads and not hanging dong like Leodama did in this episode of things that I had questioned about during this extended break, especially as I was rewatching the episode today. I took a good hard look at something that I've mentioned a few times on this Battlestar Galactica podcast, my beloved Blu-ray cover. Which not only hosts the extended unaired cut of Unfinished Business, but also a mystery man.
Okay.
And now that we're on video, I can actually bring up the real McCoy here.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm
So hold
talking
on.
about this guy.
Yes. Lower the Blu-ray just a little bit. So just to describe it for people who are not watching the video version. Of course, if you've been listening to Down the Hatch, Battlestar Galactica Across the Way, Mike has mentioned that there's a Blu-ray cover with a mystery man on it. The top row features Bill Adama, Caprica 6 or A6, Laura Roslin in the top right. Bottom row in the bottom left is Gaius Baltar. Then whether it's Boomer or Athena, either way, it's Grace Park. And then the mystery man in the lower right corner that Mike Bloom has been so curious about all along the way.
You can never be 100% sure, as has been indicated over the course of this very podcast, but I'm like 85% sure, Josh, I know who this is.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking at him. Yeah.
This son of a bitch is Carl Agathon. This little a-hole made his way onto the cover of the Blu-ray.
Mike, I love that you're talking about this like you've made some sort of incredible plot prediction.
I was Charlie Day.
As if you've like puzzled a thing, as opposed to you finally recognized that that's the same guy you've been watching on the show since the very fracking beginning. What is wrong with you? He's been staring you in the face the entire time. Every time we've brought up Hilo, I have asked, do you recognize this man? Does he leave an impression on you? Do you remember this guy? Hilo finally getting credit from Mike is a thing that I have said along the way. Mike, how on earth could you look at this man who is a main character on this show and never once be like, oh yeah, that's main character Carl Agathon Hilo in the bottom right, instead of being like, that's a mystery character who's yet to be revealed? It's Hilo, Mike. It's always been Hilo.
Let me explain myself.
We've been laughing a lot more about this than the fracking thing. Let me tell you what.
What
this
the fracking?
You should have known. This you should have got.
Let me provide a couple pieces of extenuating evidence here. Let me try to explain
that's
myself.
A big relief off of my back. I don't have to keep
exactly, but this is therapizing in so many ways. Okay, so first off, Josh, I have come to a very recent revelation about myself.
Face blind?
So yeah, there are some people that are face blind. Yeah. There are some people that are name blind. Josh Wigler, I am hair blind. I think I generally in life, if you were to get a haircut and like I were to see you in an environment that I would understandably meet you, I'd say, oh, nice haircut. I would recognize you.
Okay.
But I have a very difficult time, and this has happened multiple times in my life, that like if I were to see a photo of somebody and they change their hair, there's a sizable chance that I would not recognize who they are. And to be fair, this looks like a post-Ozempic blowout Hilo. Like, yes, Carl Agathon has that jawline that can cut glass, diamond-esque, but he's got the freaking Joaquin Phoenix Caesar haircut the entire time that we know him. Josh, look at that floof. Look at that volume. That is not a Caesar haircut. That is a widow's peak, if I've ever seen one. Here's my second point of contention. You say like, oh, yeah. Hilo's a main character. Is he, though?
Yes! Yes! He had his own storyline. He had the B plot. You didn't have to like it, but he led the B plot for all of season one. He's married to Cylon. They had a kid together. He's the XO. He's an important main character.
But
absolutely.
Is he much
can I just say, as you hold that Blu-ray up, that's just Hilo, man. That's just Carl Agathon.
Hair's different.
It's always been different. His head. His head has always looked like that. His head, his
but
face,
it's different with the hair.
The head, the whole ass thing has always just been that. This generic white, brown-haired head that belongs to Canadian actor, method actor Tomo Pennicott, who plays Carl with a K, Hilo Agathon, has always looked like that. The difference is the suit. He's wearing He's wearing the suit. He's wearing the blues that he sports here in season 3. So I've been expecting you to finally clock him here in season 3. And if we had made it to the end of season 3 and you hadn't clocked it, I was definitely going to have to say something because my goodness, at a certain point. But Mike, that's just always been Hilo.
But here's the thing. If I may put in then a petition to those that created this, listen, Blu-ray people, I'm very, very honored, very touched, and in so much gratitude for you being able to produce
Should he
this.
be there like on the Survivor DVD
No,
cover? Should he be one
absolutely
of the top
should
six?
not.
No.
This guy's a piece of white bread, and yes, he had some butter spread over him now with the Athena stuff, but he's still white bread at the end of the day, especially compared to, let me just turn it to the spine here, Josh. These are the runners-up, the 7 and 8 that couldn't make it into the playoffs here.
Let's get it.
And it's the two main characters of this episode where there's
Starbucks on the spine, Leah Dama's on the spine. Don't you love that though? Because they're like kind of like they're so close yet so far from each other.
No, I want one of them to replace Hilo. Dismiss Carl Agathon to the spine. He's a spine character. He's not a cover character.
To be totally fair, Hilo might not be a spine character, okay? He might not even be a spine character. He is a full-fledged series regular main cast character on Battlestar Galactica, but so are like 5 other people ahead in line.
Like
he's on the cover.
Where's Ty?
He shouldn't be on the cover
Tyrell?
at least up to this point, right? You know, who knows what the future holds?
So that's the thing. That's what I'm wondering now. And listen, let me say insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Allow me to get hurt again once more, Josh.
Okay,
let me open this up because now this
so funny. It's
well-kept man.
Mike, it's been killing me. It's been so funny. It's been so funny.
So allow me to state
you like in my mind, you take the Blu-ray out every week, and you're looking at it. It's staring you in the face every single Monday. You take that off your shelf and put the thing in, and it took you 2 years?
Well, when you put it like that.
It took you 2 years to figure out who that is? Mike!
Allow me to provide
I'm hair blind. Dude, that's been his hair.
It's not his hair.
It's what his hair has looked
rewatched the episode and it was as flat as his characterization,
it's his hair. Josh. That's just what it looks like.
It's slicked back. It's pushed back.
It's just what it is.
I will say now, I've got a big grand unifying theory because I agree. Why on earth, of all the characters, would this man make his way onto a main cover? And you say, what has he done as of yet? Josh, I think it's not about what he's done in the present, but what's to come.
Okay.
I think Carl Agathon will betray humanity and join the Cylons. I think if and when Athena finally gets her shit together and it's like, oh yeah, maybe they did lie about my baby dying. I think maybe her and Hilo decide to jump ship. They're not going anywhere without the other. And they decide that maybe it's a little cozier on the other side. Grass is always greener in the Cylon side of things, quite literally, if you are projecting. So maybe this means we get a Hilo turn, if you will, season 3 or even season 4.
All right. Well, I've been waiting for this Hilo turn for a very long time. Mike is now predicting a new Hilo turn. Will Hilo betray humanity for the Cylons? Add that to the list of Mike Bloom, sweeping up the floor.
We did a lot of cleanup today. That's why you call me Mike Bloom.
Cleanup today. Mike Bloom, you're on it. You got to clean up this whole mess, actually. Add it to the predictions. And let's add one more, because next week we will reach the midpoint of season 3 after some delay, which I now fully believe was worth our wait.
I hope people like this.
Not only did we get the fracking reveal, but how about that for the left hook? Mike has clocked Carl Agathon on the Blu-ray.
Yeah, I'm so happy I got the 3 extra weeks to look at the Blu-ray box.
Yeah, because like I imagine you continued your Monday tradition. You just looked at it, and you just looked at it, and finally it clicked. Next week, Mike, season 3, episode 10, because 10 comes after 9, The Passage. What's going to happen in The Passage? What are your predictions?
Okay, so The Passage, I imagine that there's going to be something around In Star Trek, I think they call it a transwarp conduit. I think in Star Wars parlance, we talk about the purgils. I think the passage is going to indicate some sort of form of travel that could prove crucial to getting them to Earth. Because let's remember, this episode doesn't really indicate it, but it's always talked about in these opening credits that they do know Earth's location, especially when they visited the pulsars and they had that sort of prophecy confirmed. So I think after an episode of Vibes, we're going to get right back to the plot. We're going to have something confirmed of, all right, we have a passage that could possibly be an access point to help get us to Earth. And now it gets brought back to the forefront. Oh, yeah, the Cylons are now looking for Earth 2, not Earth 2. We're not going to the multiverse, at least as of yet. And so it'll be a nice representation of the perennial battle between these two sides, as it's basically going to become the race to find this mythical planet.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if that's what's going to go down next on Battlestar Galactica when Down the Hatch returns with season 3, episode 10, The Passage. Make sure you're subscribed. Down the Hatch, Battlestar Galactica, wherever you get your podcasts. You can get so much more on WeKnowScriptedTV.com. Silo is wrapping up. Mike and Grace have been covering that. Lots of really fun stuff happening here on We Know Scripted TV. You're on the other side of a full run through of Squid Game season 2,
which was so much. That was so much fun. My first ever exclusive, I should say, collaboration with Chappelle.
Love that.
Leah Dama to come in and swoop one of us up. I know people feel a certain way about the season. Regardless, I think Chappelle had a lot,
spoilers,
and I had
but yes,
yeah, we had a lot of fun. We did daily recaps of the 7-episode season 2, and especially if you like reality TV, Laura, we brought in plenty of comparisons there. So be sure to check that out. And I will also announce, in the time since we have left, Josh, I have launched, believe it or not, a new podcast.
I thought you were going to say Vipers.
I mean, those two. I have to bring them back in eventually, so they can all start
cat.
Hot dog! But I'll say hot dog. I get the chance to work on a brand new show on RHAP. So it is called The Reality Flash, and not The Flash like I did when I triumphantly ripped my shirt open at the Silver Lining. You gave me early in this podcast.
I can watch the video version for that. It happened early, folks.
Listen, much like the recesses of space, it's a wide world of reality TV out there, and I am very thrilled to bring to you a new show where essentially I get to bring you the breaking news that you need to know, but some of the biggest stories happening in reality television, whether it is a leaked cast, whether it's, a big promotion or demotion in the reality TV world, whether it's a blow up that happened on social media. I will give you the gist of what happened and why it matters in bite-sized podcast form. I kicked the podcast off on January 1st, recapping some of the biggest storylines in reality TV from 2024 and what I'm most excited about for 2025. And Josh, believe it or not, the news mills kept on a turning. As the year started off, I put out a special podcast, my first regular episode of The Reality Flash, about Heidi Klum returning to Project Runway after 6 years away. And so suffice it to say, we are just getting started there. Those will obviously only really come out when there are pieces of breaking news. So the recurrence of it is going to be a little bit more scattershot, but make sure you're subscribed at therealityflash.com to not miss a second of whenever breaking news happens. I will be in your eyes and ears delivering all the news that you need.
Go get it. Therealityflash.com. Subscribe to it. Bite-sized podcasts, very easy to listen to, and you will stay informed on all of the incredible things that are happening, and sometimes the not so incredible things that are happening in the reality TV space here on RHAP. You can follow more of Mike at a Mike Bloom type wherever you can follow people on the internet. I'm at Round Howard as well. Very excited to close out the first half of season 3 of Battlestar Galactica. Finally, next week. We appreciate all of you hatchlings, team behind the curtain, literally everybody who's involved in making this podcast so fun to do, but specifically your patience. We know the schedule can sometimes be erratic, and it has been erratic these last couple of weeks.
To this episode, which was erotic.
So we appreciate you taking, being patient. We'll get episode 10 out next week. Just a heads up. The week after that, we will be dark. Mike, I'm going to be away, so I'm just telling you this now.
Okay, good.
But we're going to be dark. We'll be dark for the week after next, and then we will be right back after that to continue season 3 of BSG. So we appreciate your patience with our pace, and we do it for you. We love you guys. We love you all as much as Leah Dama loves Kara Thrace.
My name is Mike Bloom.
Josh Wigler. And I love Mike Bloom.
And I love Josh Wigler. This is the thing. We are so synonymous at this point. I mean, yeah, so much gratitude felt. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And so I felt my own sort of form of loneliness in these past few weeks, not getting to come back here on a Monday, getting to talk about it with you, Josh. But I'm happy we're back in the cycle right now, ready to proceed forward. And again, thank you to all the hatchlings that were able to communicate to us in the interim, like, oh, I can't wait for this, or those especially who, again, wanted to check in on me for my well-being. I hope I didn't blow your ears out with like the first 8 minutes of this podcast, but if you made it past here, I think we had a very fun time, and I'm ready to pick things right back up from where we left off here.
Huge thanks to all the people who did not spoil the fracking for Mike, and especially
nobody did. Nobody did,
and nobody spoiled the Blu-ray cover as well. These were two very coveted moments here on the podcast, and Mike, there are more. So
what?
we will continue to drill down like Saul the referee. We will be drilling down here deeper into Battlestar Galactica Season 3, Episode 10. We shall travel through the passage next week. Until then, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.